The scorching Manila sun poured its rays over the bustling streets as Manuel "Stone Hands" Pacific returned to his homeland after years of glory in international boxing rings. His eyes, marked by countless battles, nostalgically observed the alleys where he had grown up, the places that had shaped his unwavering determination and that now seemed smaller than in his childhood memories. The Philippines had changed, as had he, but the bond between the champion and his land remained as strong as the well-stretched ropes of a boxing ring. That same morning, thousands of miles away, David "Titan" Bautista received an unexpected call in his luxurious Los Angeles apartment. The actor of Filipino descent, who had conquered Hollywood after a meteoric wrestling career, listened attentively about the devastation caused by Typhoon Haiyan in the poorest regions of the Philippines. The images he had seen on the news didn't do justice to the reality described: homeless families, children without access to education, hospitals lacking basic resources to care for the injured. Manuel hadn't returned just for a casual visit. The boxer brought with him an ambitious project to rebuild schools and sports centers in areas most affected by poverty and natural disasters. His body, though marked by years of combat, still carried the strength and determination that had taken him to the top. But now these qualities would be directed toward a different fight, a battle for the dignity of his people. As he walked through the streets of his old neighborhood, children ran to meet him, instantly recognizing the national hero who inspired millions with his story of overcoming adversity. David, meanwhile, boarded a flight to Manila with a restlessness he hadn't felt since his first wrestling matches. The connection to his Filipino roots had always existed, but never as strong as at that moment, as if the blood of his ancestors flowed more vigorously in his veins, calling him home. In his luggage, besides clothes and personal items, he carried a project to build training centers for young sports talents, a way to give back to the land of his ancestors a little of what life had granted him. Fate, with its characteristic irony, was drawing paths that would soon intersect, uniting two legends who had never met personally, but who shared not only Filipino heritage, but also stories of perseverance, discipline, and the transformation of suffering into strength. Manuel and David, without knowing it, were about to begin a journey that would transcend their individual achievements, creating a legacy that would remain alive far beyond their names in record books or on cinema screens. Manuel's childhood, in the impoverished streets of General Santos City, had been a constant struggle for survival, with days when his stomach ached from hunger and nights when the zinc roof barely protected him from storms. Those memories, far from weakening him, forged in the young boxer an uncommon resilience, a fierce desire to change not only his own story, but that of everyone around him. Now visiting a local orphanage as part of his social project, each child's face he encountered seemed to reflect his own past, rekindling the flame of his mission. For David, the connection to the Philippines was different, built on stories told by his father in rare moments of sobriety, yellowed photographs of relatives he had never met, and an inexplicable feeling of belonging to a land his feet had never touched. Upon landing at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, the impact was immediate. The aromas, colors, humid heat, and warm smiles seemed to welcome the prodigal son who finally returned, even though this was his first official visit to the land of his ancestors. That afternoon, Manuel was participating in a meeting with local authorities to discuss the implementation of his social project when he was informed about the arrival of an international celebrity who also planned to invest in similar initiatives. David Bautista's name emerged in the conversation, provoking a mixture of curiosity and respect in the boxer, who had always admired the wrestler-turned-actor's trajectory, another son of the Philippines who had conquered the world with determination and talent. Meanwhile, David visited an improvised hospital in a region devastated by the last typhoon, where the lack of basic infrastructure contrasted dramatically with the luxury he had become accustomed to in Hollywood. The sight of exhausted doctors struggling to save lives with minimal resources and the crying of injured children deeply touched the heart of the gentle giant, confirming that his decision to return and help had been the right one. Amid the devastation, he heard stories about Manuel Pacific's tireless work, the boxer who had not forgotten his origins and who now dedicated his fortune and influence to rebuilding entire communities. That night, both Manuel and David rested in different hotels in the Philippine capital, unaware that the universe was conspiring to unite their paths. In their respective rooms, both contemplated Manila's illuminated horizon, reflecting on the profound meaning of being in that land of contrasts, where extreme poverty coexisted with immeasurable spiritual and cultural wealth. Sleep came laden with dreams of distant childhoods and possible futures, cradled by the certainty that they were exactly where they should be. The following morning dawned with a sky heavy with grey clouds, harbinger of the tropical storm approaching the Philippine coast. Manuel, accustomed to the abrupt changes in his homeland's climate, continued with his planned agenda, visiting a primary school in one of Manila's poorest neighborhoods. The peeling walls, broken desks, and the hopeful gaze of the children reaffirmed the urgency of his project, reminding him of the countless times he had studied in similar conditions, dreaming of a different future. David faced his own internal storm as he walked through the rubble of a community center, destroyed by the latest natural disaster. His imposing stature contrasted with the fragility of the moment, as silent tears ran down his face while listening to accounts from families who had lost everything but kept alive the characteristic hope of the Filipino people. Fame, money, and success seemed empty in the face of that raw reality. Awakening in the former wrestler a renewed determination to make a difference. In the office of the Ministry of Social Development, Manuel was presenting his project in detail to government authorities and potential investors when he was informed about David Bautista's presence in the country and his interest in similar initiatives. A spark of inspiration appeared in the boxer's eyes, who immediately suggested a meeting to discuss a possible collaboration, joining forces to amplify the impact of their individual projects. The idea was received with enthusiasm by those present, who glimpsed the transformative potential of the union between two such influential personalities. Meanwhile, in the outskirts of Tacloban, a region severely affected by Typhoon Haiyan, David was participating in an emergency relief distribution when his phone received a message about Manuel's interest in meeting him. A genuine smile lit up the actor's face, who had always admired the legendary boxer's trajectory, seeing in him a reflection of his own journey of overcoming adversity. The possibility of joining forces with another son of the Philippines who had conquered the world seemed predestined, as if the purpose of his visit was now fully revealed. The storm finally arrived in the late afternoon, unloading torrential rain on the islands, as if nature wanted to test once more the resilience of those people. At different points of the archipelago, Manuel and David observed the same stormy sky, feeling a strange connection with the indomitable force of the elements, so similar to the battles they had faced in their lives. The external storm mirrored the internal transformations both were experiencing, preparing the ground for the meeting that would change not only their perspectives, but the future of countless Filipino communities. The charity event organized by the Philippine Foundation for Community Development had been planned months before, but now gained a special dimension with the confirmation of Manuel Pacific and David Bautista's presence. The hall of a historic hotel in downtown Manila was elegantly decorated with elements of local culture, bringing together business people, politicians, celebrities, and representatives of underprivileged communities in a rare demonstration of unity for a common cause. The expectation was palpable, circulating among the guests like an invisible electric current. Manuel arrived discreetly, accompanied only by his personal assistant and a security guard, maintaining the humility that characterized him despite his status as a national legend. His well-tailored suit couldn't completely hide the boxer's posture, the compact and powerful body shaped by decades of discipline and dedication to boxing. While greeting acquaintances and exchanging kind words with admirers, his eyes scanned the environment, secretly seeking the imposing figure of David Bautista, whose presence would be impossible to go unnoticed. On the other side of the hall, David entered the space with the same magnetic presence that had transformed him into a star of the wrestling ring and later of movie screens. Despite his impressive stature and sculpted physique, It was his warm smile and attentive gaze that really captured attention, revealing the sensitivity few would associate with the intimidating character he portrayed in films. Greeting people. With genuine interest, the actor also discreetly sought out the famous boxer, feeling an inexplicable anxiety, like before entering the ring for an important fight. The moment finally came when an event coordinator led Manuel through the hall, making way through the elegant crowd to where David was conversing with a group of business people about reconstruction projects. Their eyes met even before formal introductions, a mutual recognition that transcended shared fame, as if two warriors from distant tribes identified in each other the same essence. The momentary silence that established between them carried the weight of parallel journeys, of similar battles fought in different arenas. The initial handshake spontaneously transformed into a fraternal embrace, surprising those present and themselves with the naturalness of the gesture. In that brief moment of physical connection, something intangible flowed between the two men. A silent understanding about sacrifices made, pains overcome, and the responsibility that accompanied success. Photographers captured the precise instant when two of the Philippines' most celebrated sons united not just in a cordial gesture, but in an authentic demonstration of brotherhood that transcended their celebrity status, touching something deeply human and universal. The repercussion of the meeting between Manuel and David quickly surpassed the boundaries of the charity event, with images of the spontaneous embrace circulating on social media and gracing the front pages of Philippine newspapers the following morning. More than a simple meeting between celebrities, the population saw in that gesture a powerful symbol of national unity, two sons of the Philippines who had conquered the world returning to extend their hands to their people. The emotional impact was immense, especially for young people from underprivileged communities who saw in the trajectories of Manuel and David the materialization of seemingly impossible dreams. Taking advantage of the positive wave generated by the meeting, the two decided to visit together a camp for displaced persons in the Tacloban region, where thousands of families still lived in precarious conditions after the devastating typhoon. The arrival of the unusual duo created a commotion among the temporary residents, with children running around them and adults approaching timidly to thank them for their presence. The boxer and the actor, initially uncomfortable with the attention, soon found themselves surrounded by the human warmth of those resilient people, whose smiles defied adverse circumstances. During the visit, Manuel and David met Esperanza, a 67-year-old woman who had lost everything in the disaster, but maintained in her improvised shelter a small school where she taught the camp's children, refusing to allow education to be interrupted by the tragedy. The determination of the elderly woman, who used pieces of wood as blackboards and created teaching materials with minimal resources, deeply moved the two men, making them rethink the scale and focus of their individual projects. Right there, sitting on wooden crates under a canvas that served as a roof, they began to outline a joint plan that would transcend simple physical reconstruction. That same night, staying in the modest home of a local community leader who had insisted on hosting them, Manuel and David talked until dawn, sharing childhood stories, challenges faced, and lessons learned on their respective paths to success. They discovered surprising similarities in their journeys. Both had known hunger and uncertainty. Both had found in sports not just a career, but salvation. And both carried invisible scars from battles the public would never know about. The connection forming between them went beyond mutual professional admiration. A genuine friendship was born, forged in the recognition of kindred spirits. Before the sun rose over the crystal waters of the Pacific Ocean, the two had reached a transformative decision. They would unite their resources, influence, and projects into a single broad initiative, focused not just on rebuilding physical structures, but on creating a sustainable model of community development that could be replicated in different affected regions. The name chosen for the joint project emerged naturally, Seeds of Hope, in honor of the elderly teacher who personified the resilience and unshakable hope of the Filipino people, even in the face of the worst adversities. In the following weeks, the Seeds of Hope project took shape with surprising speed, driven by the tireless dedication of Manuel and David, who set aside international commitments to devote themselves entirely to the initiative. The improvised office in an old warehouse at Manila's port became the nerve center of the operation, bringing together architects, engineers, educators, health professionals, and community leaders in an unprecedented collaborative effort. Maps of affected regions covered the walls, marked with colored pins indicating schools, sports centers, clinics, and community centers to be built or renovated. The first phase of the project symbolically began in Tacloban, in the same camp where they had met Esperanza. Manuel and David didn't limit themselves to financing the works or appearing at promotional events. Both rolled up their sleeves and actively participated in the construction, carrying materials, mixing concrete, and raising walls side by side with local workers and international volunteers. The images of the famous boxer and the imposing actor, covered in sweat and dust, working hard under the scorching sun, inspired a wave of volunteerism that surprised even the most optimistic organizers. In just 1 month, the first integrated community center was completed, a modern and sustainable structure that housed a school, a basic health clinic, a small sports gymnasium, and spaces for professional training workshops. The inauguration ceremony was deliberately simple, focused not on the personalities involved, but on the children who ran excitedly exploring the new space, the elderly receiving medical care in the newly equipped clinic, and the young people already signing up for the first training workshops. Esperanza, named honorary director of the center, cut the symbolic ribbon with tears in her eyes, representing the realization of a collective dream. The success of the first unit attracted international attention and new investors to the project, allowing construction to expand to other affected regions. Manuel used his political influence to cut through red tape and ensure government support, while David mobilized contacts in the entertainment industry to promote global fundraising campaigns. The partnership that had begun with a spontaneous embrace had transformed into a powerful synergy, where the complementary strengths of each amplified exponentially the impact of their joint work. More significant than the physical transformation of communities was the change in the emotional atmosphere of the regions served. Where discouragement and a sense of abandonment had previously prevailed, community pride and concrete hope for a better future now flourished. Young people who had planned to migrate to big cities found reasons to stay and contribute to local development. Children started dreaming again of possibilities that had previously seemed unattainable, and the elderly rediscovered their value as guardians of traditional wisdom, actively participating in the physical and cultural reconstruction of their communities. The seeds planted were beginning to germinate, slowly transforming the social landscape of the Philippines. 6 months after the start of the Seeds of Hope project, a new typhoon hit the Philippine archipelago, bringing with it devastating winds and torrential rains that tested not only the newly built physical structures, but also the renewed spirit of the communities. Manuel and David, who had briefly traveled to fulfill unavoidable professional commitments, returned immediately upon learning of the emergency, facing dangerous conditions to reach the most affected areas. What they found, however, exceeded all expectations. The integrated community centers had not only withstood the fury of the storm, but had transformed into safe shelters where thousands of people found refuge, food and medical assistance. More impressive than the resilience of the buildings was the organized response of the communities themselves, which activated emergency protocols developed during the training offered by the project. Young people who had participated in first aid workshops now attended to minor injuries. Fishermen trained in rescue techniques carried out operations in flooded areas, and the installed solar energy systems ensured electricity for essential medical equipment, even with the collapse of the conventional power grid. What could have been another tragedy transformed into the first concrete demonstration of the effectiveness of the model implemented by Manuel and David. Images of the community centers serving as islands of hope amid destruction circulated worldwide, attracting the attention of international media and global humanitarian organizations. The contrast between areas served by the project and those still exclusively dependent on government aid was striking, highlighting the transformative impact of the initiative and serving as a powerful argument for its expansion. International. Development agencies and humanitarian funds began to study the model for possible replication in other vulnerable regions of the planet, transforming a local response into a potential global paradigm for disaster recovery. On a particularly difficult night, after an exhausting day coordinating rescue operations, Manuel and David found a rare moment of rest on the improvised veranda of a community center in Samar. Observing the stars that finally appeared after days of storm, they reflected on the unexpected journey that had united them and the personal transformations they had experienced in the process. Manuel confessed that after years of feeling empty despite victories in the ring, he had finally found a purpose that completely filled his heart. David, in turn, revealed how the newly discovered connection with his Filipino roots had healed an identity wound he had carried throughout his life, giving him a sense of belonging that success in Hollywood had never provided. The next morning, as the sun rose over devastated but not defeated landscapes, extraordinary news reached the two. The Seeds of Hope project had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, recognition that transcended any boxing title or box office success they had previously achieved. The nomination, although unexpected, validated not only the work done but mainly the philosophy behind it. The belief that lasting transformations arise when communities are empowered to become protagonists of their own reconstruction, both physical and spiritual. More than personal recognition, the nomination represented a collective victory for the Filipino people, whose unshakable resilience now inspired the entire world. 3 years after the meeting that had transformed their lives and profoundly impacted the Philippines, Manuel and David participated in the inauguration ceremony of the 30th Integrated Community Center, this time on the remote island of Mindoro. The structure, more sophisticated than the first units, now included a complete rural hospital, a technical school with modern laboratories, professional sports facilities, and a cultural center dedicated to preserving local traditions. Around them, healthy children played in the newly built courtyard. Elderly people shared stories under fruit trees planted at the beginning of the project, and young people animatedly discussed sustainable entrepreneurship projects that brought new economic vitality to the region. The Seeds of Hope project, although it had not won the Nobel Peace Prize, had received various international recognitions and, more importantly, had become self-sustainable, with the first communities served now contributing to implementation in new areas. The integrated development model, which combined physical reconstruction with educational training, economic revitalization, and cultural strengthening, had become a reference studied in universities and adopted by humanitarian organizations in different countries affected by natural disasters. The spontaneous embrace between two illustrious sons of the Philippines, immortalized in photographs that adorned the walls of each community center, continued to symbolize the spirit of unity and solidarity that fueled the initiative. For Manuel, now definitively retired from the boxing ring and fully dedicated to humanitarian causes, the personal transformation had been as profound as that of the communities he had helped. The fighter who had built his identity through victories over opponents had discovered a more meaningful form of triumph by defeating more powerful adversaries: extreme poverty, discouragement, and lack of opportunities. His popularity, instead of diminishing with distance from the sports spotlight, had grown exponentially, transforming him into an almost mythical figure among Filipinos, a living symbol that it is possible to conquer the world without ever abandoning one's roots or forgetting one's people. David, in turn, had incorporated his experience in the Philippines into his artistic career, carefully selecting roles that conveyed positive messages and producing documentaries about community resilience in different cultures. The intimidating giant of the screens had revealed to the world his sensitivity and depth, using his platform to amplify voices frequently ignored by the global media. More significantly, he had established a permanent connection with the land of his ancestors, building a modest residence in one of the communities served by the project, where he spent increasingly more time between his international commitments, finding in the Philippines the inner peace that Hollywood could never offer. The embrace between Manuel Pacific and David Bautista, captured by photographers on that gala night in Manila, had long transcended the moment and the personalities involved, transforming into a powerful national symbol of hope, unity, and unlimited possibilities. Reproduced in murals, t-shirts, schoolbooks, and even in a bronze monument in the capital, the spontaneous gesture between two warriors from different arenas daily inspired millions of Filipinos to believe in their potential and in the transformative power of collaboration. In a country frequently devastated by natural and social storms, that embrace had become a permanent reminder that, even after the worst storms, the sun always shines again for those who keep alive the flame of hope and work together to rebuild not only structures, but dreams and entire communities. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel.